With all the chatter around Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli and the Champions Trophy looming upon us, it is impossible to not talk about the man who completed them. I am, of course, talking about Shikhar Dhawan. Shikhar Dhawan was one of those players who stepped up in big matches, and he also got the nickname Mr. ICC because of his performance in various ICC tournaments, right from the World Cup to the Champions Trophy itself. But what did he do correctly, and what was his career like that eventually led him to get this title? Before we get into the career of Shikhar Dhawan and what worked for him, hit that subscribe button. Shikhar Dhawan, right from age group cricket, was one of those players who came across all of the ranks, right from the under 16s to the under 19s. He first represented his state Delhi in the under 16s, and from then on, he played for under 19 Delhi as well as eventually playing for India under 19 in the 2003 2004 under 19 World Cup. Shikhar Dhawan's swashbuckling start in the under 19 World Cup meant that he drew a lot of comparisons to some Indian players like Saurav Ganguly. It was a breath of fresh air. This opener scored very freely, aggressive stroke play, and in general caught the eyes of a lot of people who thought that he would make it big immediately on the senior circuit. He scored 505 runs at an impressive average of 84.1 in that tournament itself, along with 3 centuries to go with it. But despite this dream start, Shikhar Dhawan failed to make it big even in domestic cricket. He was one of those players who consistently averaged around 40 in each season of Ranji cricket, but he never really had a breakout season that would cause the selectors to have a look at him and pick him for the Indian team. Add to that, Shikhar Dhawan was part of an era where India saw a lot of great batters. You had Sachin Tendulkar and Saurav Ganguly still in their prime opening the batting for India. You also had Virender Sehwag and Gautam Gambhir entering the system itself. And because of all of this, Dhawan had to do something outstanding and incredible to be able to break into that Indian top order. Through his consistent scores in domestic cricket, Dhawan eventually got a chance to make an ODI debut in 2010 for India, but even here he just scored 0 and played just 2 balls. It was forgetful, and from here on, even in 2011, he played all of just 4 matches where he had just 150 and he didn't particularly impress. Dhawan obviously was playing in place of batters like Sachin and Sehwag who were taking rest at the time, and Dhawan was not getting proper chances to play against the big teams. Interestingly enough, this was also the time around which India was undergoing a lot of transitional changes, and also there were different openers who were being tried, right from Dinesh Karthik to Murli Vijay, Gautam Gambhir, Virender Sehwag, Sachin Tendulkar. All of these people were fighting for that same opening spot, and it was only going to be a matter of time before Sachin, Sehwag, these guys retired, and so there would be an opportunity that would come, but would Shikhar Dhawan be ready to grab it was the question. Dhawan, of course, had not done his chances any harm because he consistently scored runs even in the IPL. In fact, in the IPL of 2012, he scored 569 runs at an impressive average of 40.6, and he also got 550s in that tournament itself. Not only that, in the 2012-2013 Ranji Trophy season, Shikhar Dhawan showed some glimpses of being able to make big scores. He scored 461 runs in that tournament at an average of 51.2. He also had 2 centuries to go with it, and I think this was where Shikhar Dhawan showed that he's able to play the long innings as well, and this is something that would have given him an edge moving into 2013 itself. Because of the Ranji Trophy performances that Shikhar Dhawan had put in that 2012-2013 season, he was picked for the 3rd test in India to play against Australia in the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Now, of course, he was a backup opener, and in the first 2 tests and even prior to that, Virender Sehwag was struggling and he couldn't notch up any big scores, which meant that Virender Sehwag was dropped and Shikhar Dhawan was handed his debut in that 3rd test match. And how he grabbed that opportunity. It was day 3 on a lovely batting surface against a fairly docile Australian bowling attack. They were already 2-0 down in the series and India had to just capitalize, and that's exactly what Shikhar Dhawan did as well. He came out and in less than a day, in fact in just 58 overs of the day, Shikhar Dhawan scored 185 runs. To this date, this is one of the finest debuts ever by an Indian batter, and at that time I remember watching this live as well. He absolutely took the world by storm. The kind of innings that he played, the kind of domination that he showed, it felt like Shikhar Dhawan was ready for the big stage. But as fate would have it, in that innings itself, Shikhar Dhawan went on to injure his hand and he didn't even come out to bat in the 2nd innings and the rest of the test series. And for a few months, he was not playing any form of competitive cricket whatsoever. In fact, he only returned in the IPL of 2013, where he had a decent season, scoring 311 runs at a decent average of 38.87. And it seemed like not much had changed. There was still form on his side. He was still fairly aggressive in his stroke play. He was still hitting the middle of the bat, and in general, he was getting good starts and good runs. Nothing concerning for him to be able to make a comeback to the Indian team itself. Now, the Indian squad that was picked for the 2013 Champions Trophy had Dinesh Karthik and Murli Vijay, both of whom had opened for India previously, and it was a combination that was tried out before. Along with this, you also had Rohit Sharma in the mix, and you had possibly him opening the innings, because in a few games prior to that, Rohit Sharma was tried at the top of the innings as well, and there was a little little bit of conversation around how he might open the innings. And it seemed all but done for Shikhar Dhawan. Nobody thought that he would be making his debut, and this is where I think a couple of things worked extremely well and in his favor. The first thing, of course, was that Murli Vijay wasn't in particularly great form, and this meant that Dhoni would most likely overlook Murli Vijay in that opening slot. The other surprise was the fact that Dinesh Karthik had got his centuries in the middle order, and this probably made Dhoni think that Dinesh Karthik is better off batting in the middle instead of opening the innings. Lastly, because of Dhawan's test century and the promise that he'd shown and batted well in the white ball format, and the fact that he was a lefty might have eventually prompted Dhoni to send Dhawan to the top of the order to open the innings. And let's set the stage, right? 2013 Champions Trophy, India's first match against South Africa, which at the time were the squad to beat. In fact, in the 2011 World Cup campaign where India won that World Cup, South Africa was the only team that had beaten India in that ICC event. Keeping all of this in mind, the match is happening in England. The stakes are high. It's the first game. It's a relatively young Indian side, and boy, oh boy, how Shikhar Dhawan grabbed that opportunity. India were put into bat by South Africa, and the pitch wasn't the easiest. It was slightly two-paced, and this was also evident in the way both Rohit Sharma and Shikhar Dhawan started. Dhawan especially was scratchy to start off with. He was consistently getting hit on his pads, on his chest. He even got hit on the helmet, and he somehow scraped his way to 32 of 32 deliveries. And this is where possibly one over changed not only his innings but also his entire career. It was Robin Peterson who came on to ball, and Shikhar Dhawan hit him for back-to-back boundaries, and from there it felt like Shikhar Dhawan completely cut loose. He took the attack to the opposition. He was consistently scoring big runs, hitting the boundaries, forged a huge partnership with Rohit Sharma as well, and then later on the rest of the batters. He eventually scored 114 of just 94 deliveries, striking at 121, something that at the time was not a common occurrence in the ODI format. Shikhar Dhawan had finally seemed to announce himself at the international tournament. And for all the people thinking it was a fluke, Shikhar Dhawan proved all of them wrong. He came out in the second match against West Indies, set up a beautiful chase, getting 102 not out, and from there on he just got runs in every game. In the games against Pakistan, Sri Lanka and the final against England, Shikhar Dhawan got scores in each of these matches. He's got a 48, 68 and a 31 in that reintroduced 20 over final. Not only was he an attacking player who could take the attack to the opposition, but he'd also played well in tricky chases against Sri Lanka, where he'd bid his time and ensured that India did not lose early wickets at the top. India famously went on to win that Champions Trophy, with Shikhar Dhawan getting the player of the tournament, ending with 363 runs at an average of 90.75 and a strike rate of 101. From here on, Dhawan went on to have a brilliant 2013 and 2014. In fact, in a list A game in 2013 in the tri-series between Australia A, South Africa A and India A, Dhawan scored 248 in one of these list A games, and it just felt like there was no stopping this man. He just scored runs after runs, and this is how it progressed in 2013 and also up until 2014. However, one thing that was starting to stand out a little bit was that Dhawan was struggling to score runs overseas, especially in the SENA countries barring England. Dhawan really struggled to get starts, and he struggled overall to put up a big score. And you'll also see it here in his averages before the ODI World Cup in 2015. You can clearly see that Dhawan is struggling overseas but was doing fairly well in subcontinent conditions. Now I bring this up because the ODI World Cup in 2015 was due to happen in Australia, and there were a couple of questions raised on Dhawan's credentials because of how he'd performed up until then in overseas conditions. In fact, there was a tri-nation tournament between England, Australia and India just before the World Cup to serve as warm-up for the World Cup itself. Here too, Shikhar Dhawan struggled, and in fact, Ajinkya Rahane was the backup opener who was getting runs here as well. And it seemed all but certain that Shikhar Dhawan might once again get dropped, lose his spot to Ajinkya Rahane in that opening slot. But once again, come the opening fixture of the World Cup, once again it was Shikhar Dhawan, who probably was backed by MS Dhoni, also the fact that he was a lefty, and given the chance to open the batting with Rohit Sharma once again for India. And just like that, Dhawan switched on his ICC mode. He scored a 73 against Pakistan, and India eventually went on to win that match. And from there, he went on to score 137 against his favourite opponents, the South Africans, and from there he scored 100 against Ireland. All in all, having yet another successful campaign in that 2015 World Cup. Despite India going out in the semi-finals of the 2015 World Cup, one thing was extremely clear. Shikhar Dhawan was a man for big matches. Every time in any kind of knockout games, Shikhar Dhawan would always turn up. He would always turn up on the big stage, and this is why he also got that nickname of Mr. ICC. In fact, even in the Asia Cup prior to the World Cup in 2014, Shikhar Dhawan was the top scorer for India here as well, getting 192 runs in 4 innings at an impressive average of 48. And one thing was starting to get clear was that Shikhar Dhawan was definitely a better white ball batsman than a red ball batsman. Even even in that, the ODI format was something that he thoroughly enjoyed. I say this because in 2016, the Asia Cup was in the T20 format, and barring the finals where Shikhar Dhawan got a crucial 60, he struggled through the rest of the tournament. Even his T20 numbers aren't all that impressive, but once again, the 60 in the final showed that Shikhar Dhawan was a big match player and India could rely on him to turn up in these knockout matches. And by this time, Shikhar Dhawan was an all-format player for India. He had formed an incredible opening partnership with Rohit Sharma, something that we'll also touch upon at the end of this video. And Shikhar Dhawan had now started to get runs all around the world. He of course was a better batsman in the subcontinent, but he also had centuries to show outside of just India. Now come 2017 and once again India are ready to play the Champions Trophy. Once again Shikhar Dhawan has a chance here not only to establish himself as one of India's best ODI batters, but also to carry forward his legacy of Mr. ICC. Of course, no prizes for second guessing what was to follow in that tournament. Dhawan played his usual brand of cricket, and right from the start of the tournament, Dhawan had started to rack up the scores once again. It's as if he had a mode that he could get into every time an ICC tournament was upon him. Scores of 68, 125, 78, 46 and 21 leading up to the final. In the 5 matches that he played, Shikhar Dhawan had got 338 runs at an insane average of 67.6 and he was striking at 101.8. Almost fittingly, India went on to lose that final against Pakistan in the Champions Trophy. The only game where Shikhar Dhawan got a low score, that was all of just 21 runs, and clearly this highlighted the importance of Shikhar Dhawan to this Indian squad. From here on, he carried this rich vein of form into 2017 and also 2018, particularly the Asia Cup, where he stepped it up once again, becoming the highest scorer of that tournament itself. India went on to win that Asia Cup, and Shikhar Dhawan scored 342 runs here in just 5 innings. And his repeatedly good performances in the ODI format ensured that he would get picked in the Test squad time and again, despite not having particularly good performances. And this is where I want to touch upon the weakness of Shikhar Dhawan and something that might have eventually contributed to him being dropped from the squad. Barring a single Test series in New Zealand where Shikhar Dhawan got a century and a 50, he struggled to score runs in the SENA countries. In fact, in the 26 Test innings that he played in England, South Africa and Australia, Shikhar Dhawan had just 150 to show for his efforts. And it was not that Shikhar Dhawan was getting out early. A lot of times this man would get in, get the start and would then get out or throw his wicket away. And this is also evident in the scores in which he's been dismissed. 54.3% of the times Shikhar Dhawan was dismissed between the score of 10 and 39. That's almost more than half the times that he's gotten a start, he's ended up throwing his wicket away. And with the likes of KL Rahul and Mayank Agarwal knocking the door and almost banging it down in the Ranji Trophy, it was only going to be a matter of time before Shikhar Dhawan was dropped from that Test squad. And that's exactly what happened in 2018 on that England series where India lost horribly. Shikhar Dhawan played 4 Test matches and was eventually dropped from that squad due to lack of scores. But none of this really deterred Shikhar Dhawan from making the big scores in the ODIs, and he carried his 50 overs cricket form into the 2019 World Cup itself. Despite having a slightly scratchy start to 2019, Shikhar Dhawan once again turned up in the ICC tournament, that was the ICC World Cup of 2019. In just his second game, he scored a century once again. However, this time it wasn't going to be a fairy tale ending for Mr. ICC. In that century that he scored against Australia, he ended up breaking his thumb, which ruled him out for the rest of the tournament and for a good part of that year itself. If you had told fans at this time that this was going to be Shikhar Dhawan's last ICC tournament, we all would have disagreed strongly, almost laughed at the statement that you made. But that's exactly how cricket goes. Come the year 2020 and 2021, we are affected by COVID and we are in lockdown. Not many matches being played. In fact, just 12 matches played in those 2 years. Shikhar Dhawan was handed the captaincy here. He even performed well, averaging 50 plus in both of those years. He stroked 650s and was dismissed multiple times in the 90s as well. And this was almost very poetic of how Shikhar Dhawan's career was slowly but surely coming to a halt. Every time he was in the 90s, there was some nervous energy there and he was not able to cross that milestone and get to the century. And in a very similar manner, his career was also slowly but surely coming to an end. With the likes of Shubman Gill knocking on the door, scoring all of those runs, having made his way into that Indian lineup, and Shikhar Dhawan not having age on his side, it seemed like the selectors were ready to move on from Shikhar, who was not playing all 3 formats anymore, and they were ready to place their bets on a younger, more hungry Shubman Gill. A poor showing in 2022 did not help Shikhar Dhawan's cause. He had an average of just 34.4, which by his standards was pretty low in 2022, and this eventually was the last year of international cricket that he played for India. From here, he was dropped from the Indian squad and never made a comeback, and he decided to call it quits in the August of 2024. In a world where everyone praises Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli for their white ball greatness, we often forget how how important a cog Shikhar Dhawan was to that Indian top order. Had it not been for Shikhar Dhawan, Rohit Sharma would have not been able to start off innings in the way that he always has, and Virat Kohli would not have been able to capitalize on the opener's base that they would almost invariably set up in each ODI game of cricket that India played. Together, Rohit, Kohli and Dhawan possibly formed one of the greatest top order trios in the game of cricket itself in the ODI format. In fact, in the matches that they played together, these three contributed to 58.9% of all of the runs that India scored. And a very small but interesting insight that also comes from all of the games that these guys played together was that Rohit and Kohli had averages higher than their career averages in all the matches that they played with Shikhar Dhawan. Not only that, Kohli had a greater strike rate than his career strike rate, which shows that Kohli was able to come in and dominate right from the get-go, whereas Rohit Sharma had a lower strike rate than his career strike rate, showing that Shikhar Dhawan would take the attack to the opposition, allowing Rohit that time to settle in and then take on the attack to the opposition. In this way, Dhawan not only ensured that he himself would contribute a lot of runs to Indian cricket, but he also ensured that the likes of Virat Kohli and Rohit Sharma were able to eventually get to great heights and save India and take them across the line in a lot of games of cricket. Dhawan is rightfully also called Mr. ICC. He has the most number of runs by an Indian in the ICC Champions Trophy, and he's not even played that many innings as compared to the people on this list. Not only that, in the ICC ODI matches that Shikhar Dhawan played along with Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, he's by far the highest scorer. In fact, he's much ahead when compared to Virat as well as Rohit, getting 1,238 runs in these games at an insane average of 65.15 and striking at 98.25. Dhawan eventually ended a multi-format career that was largely successful, especially in the ODI format. He also went on to form one of the most lethal white ball opening partnerships along with Rohit Sharma. Not only that, he constantly turned up for big matches and big tournaments, name it the Asia Cup, the Champions Trophy or the World Cup. Shikhar Dhawan would always turn up not only in the group stages but also in the knockout games, and he contributed so immensely in this way to Indian cricket. But even more than his batting, a lot of us fans are going to remember Shikhar Dhawan for much more. We're going to remember him for that cheeky smile, for the thigh slap celebration, and for the way he twirled his moustache. With the Champions Trophy due to happen in less than a month, India are definitely going to miss this man, and they will hope that the person coming in to fill these boots will be able to do even half as well as Shikhar Dhawan. This has been our video on Shikhar Dhawan and the legacy that he's left behind for Indian cricket. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, definitely like, share this video with your friends, leave your comments down below. All of our socials are in the links in our description. We also have an email newsletter, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.